Andiamo a vedere qua. Qua, vieni. Guarda. Capisci a te?
So, guten Appetit.
Fuori quella roba lì e l'hai fatto a me.
No, hay conexión con todas. Ellas tienen conexión entre ellas y yo con un par de ellas, yo con una que se llama Kate, y esta
Auf der Polizei ein Foto.
Sì, sì, tutto, appena salite la rivedete subito.
Di qua comunque. È di là.
Stavo pensando deve essere al largo, non lì c'è la volta.
Ma lui era non ha trovato quel binocolo a guardare il
under the tongue of Adam and to bury him after his death. So here we have Adam still alive on the right side in the next scene where you get some damage, water damage, you get the desperate Eve who is opening up her arms. Out of this seed and the ton of the body of Adam now grows this massive tree that you see in the background. You notice that? So this tree will then be, we are the next scene down, will be cut down by Solomon. Solomon would like to use this wood for the Temple of Jerusalem, but he figures out that this is not working. Therefore, he uses this wood as a bridge on one of the rivers. In front of this bridge, you get now, in the next level on the left side, the Queen of Sheba, who is kneeling down. She wants to cross this bridge, but then she understands the spiritual message of the wood, kneels down, and is demanding also a visit. She demands to visit the King Solomon. That's what you see in this temple-like construction on the right. In the center, you notice place the King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, who is bending slightly forward in this whitish garment. What she does now is she tells him a prophecy that she had received. And this is the wood will cause actually a lot of pain to the Jewish people. For this reason, now we have to move a little bit to the right, I hope you don't mind. So as a logical consequence, Solomon wanted to do it here, let us hide this dangerous reason. And you see here now, we came on the right side.
con calma.
Ma figli! Abbiamo visto tipo... Terus si Farda pindah di London,
de San Domenico.
Quindi hanno quelli
Oh, I'll find it.